So guys, the authoritarianism in the UK is potentially about to get a lot worse, as we've got the UK government is desperately trying to roll out mandatory digital ID. Under the guise of tackling the same migrant crisis it is instrumental in facilitating in the first place. Digital ID is the hill to die on. All the other totalitarian technologies, including CBDCs, social credit systems, personal carbon allowances, and 15-minute districts, depend on digital ID being in place first. If we ever allow our governments to take us down that road, the only destination it leads to is digital dystopia, and it will be very difficult to ever turn back. Do not comply. We're going to take a look at the video attached there in a second, but some additional context on how bad this stuff is getting. TheTimes.com UK wrote, police make 30 arrests a day for offensive online messages. Civil liberties groups say that the authorities are over-policing the internet and threatening free speech using vague laws. The police are making more than 30 arrests a day over offensive posts on social media and other platforms. Thousands of people are being detained and questioned for sending messages that cause annoyance, inconvenience, or anxiety to others via the internet, telephone, or mail. Custody data obtained by The Times shows that officers are making about 12,000 arrests a year under Section 127 of the Communications Act 2003 and Section 1 of the Malicious Communications Act 1988. Showing this chart of the data, increasing over time, number of arrests made under Section 127. Okay, repeating the thing that we just read, so yeah, we get the point there. And as you can see, this has been proliferating a lot since 2017, according to this chart, maybe even before then. That's not displayed here. And then actually leveling off slightly in 2022, with an extremely slight decrease in 2023, but essentially the same figure. I mean, going from 12.4 to 12.1, close to 12.2 there. So, yeah. But hey, the UK government wants to take it further with this mandatory digital ID idea as well.
ID cards once again back on the agenda. We've been here before.
Yeah, and I think Downing Street are clearly desperate to show that they're doing everything they can to find solutions to this. In fact, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said yesterday they are looking at, quote, anything that works. And so we've had a series of announcements since Monday when MPs returned to Westminster. The latest idea is looking again at digital ID cards. Now, that was very much downplayed by the government pretty recently when it was raised, but
I was hoping they were going to give some more context on to like what led up to this as well, because they mentioned the migrant crisis. And to my understanding, yeah, they're basically saying like, oh, because there's so many of these migrants in the country now, we need to introduce digital IDs to monitor all this stuff and to handle it all better. This is what you guys wanted, right? You wanted us to handle the migrant crisis better, right? So let's just roll out digital IDs to monitor everyone. Yeah. And that's why people are saying it's like, Starmer and his government are basically manufacturing an issue and then proposing this solution to deal with it. And of course, the solution is basically give the government even more power when they create the problem to begin with. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe she'll give that context in this clip. Maybe not. It's about a minute long, a minute further rather. So let's keep going, see what else she has to say here.
Downing Street say the debate has changed. And I think significantly, they say people's expectations have changed. And so ministers are now looking again at the possibility of everybody having a unique ID, which they can use to prove that they are in this country illegally when applying for a job, for example, or paying bills and so on. The idea being to stop people being able to work in the so-called black economy and to reduce what are called the pull factors, drawing people to this country, which is something President Macron asked Keir Starmer to look at when he was here earlier this year. Now, if all of this sounds a little bit familiar, yes, it is because the last Labour government tried to do this. Tony Blair and David Blunkett wanted to bring in a national ID card, but in the end that was scrapped by the coalition government because of concerns over the cost and over civil liberties. And some people say those concerns remain.
These types of systems collect vast amounts of personal information in centralised government databases that then become honeypots for hackers. And so there are real implications for the privacy, security and data rights of the whole population. France itself has mandatory ID cards, and that hasn't stopped an underground economy existing there.
This response to the clip saying it's the classic problem reaction solution scenario. If the goal is to address the migrant crisis, the priority should be direct action. Intercepting boats at sea and managing arrivals on the beaches, then returning people to their point of origin. A digital ID card isn't going to solve anything if the most basic steps can't be handled first. Another user saying they frame it as order from chaos, but the chaos is engineered. Digital ID is the first lock. Every lock after it closes faster. Yeah, I mean, look, the people keep protesting these things, and a common chant at the protests is send them home. So the people have been very clear about what they want and how they want their government to handle the situation. And it seems like the government is intent on doing everything except what the people want. And the proposed solutions by the government just end up being more authoritarian towards their own people. That takes us to the next clip. And I understand Farage is a bit of a controversial figure in the UK. And like I've said before, I'm not an expert in UK politics. I'm just talking about things that I find amusing. I'm not here to shill for Farage. And I think, you like the guy or don't like him, I really don't care. Do whatever you want to do. But what I do find amusing is Starmer freaking out. And that's why I want to watch this clip, because apparently we got 50 seconds of Starmer raging. The context is, Starmer attacks Farage for being unpatriotic and telling the Americans about Labour's authoritarian Britain. He calls Farage a disgrace. I'll tell you what's a disgrace. 3,000 people a year arrested for social media posts, 7 times more than Russia. Except this figure is actually massively understated. As we went over, it's actually around 12,000, a little more than 12,000 a year. So, yeah. Significantly more than 3,000. As a matter of fact, it's about 4 times higher than that figure. And so if that's true about Russia, what do we have now? A 4 times multiplier on this figure? So crazy stuff.
The honourable member for Clacton is not here representing his constituencies in the House that he was elected to. No, he's flown to America to badmouth and talk down our country. And worse than that, Mr. Speaker, if you can believe it, he's gone there to lobby the Americans to impose sanctions on this country which will harm working people. You cannot get more unpatriotic than that. It's a disgrace. And Mr. Speaker, on the question of the Online Safety Act, that protects children from material on suicide, on self-harm, and online predators.
They really tripling down, dozening down on this Online Safety Act nonsense.
And Reform say they would scrap it. When their leader was asked, well, what would you replace it with? His answer, there needs to be a tech answer. I don't know what that is. Well, you can't run a country on don't know answers.
I think a better answer would have been nothing. What are you going to replace it with? Nothing. We're not doing any of this authoritarian nonsense. But that was definitely funny, though. It's crazy how Starmer is also just dozening down on the freaking Online Safety Act. They've gotten so much backlash. It's already backfired. It's been a complete mess. And what are they doing? Oh, we're gonna keep doing that, guys. It's working so well right now. Well, here's a clip of Nigel Farage speaking at Washington. I guess we'll take a look at what some of Farage has to say here. He said a lot more than what's in this clip, I presume. But this will give us an idea of what's got Starmer so upset. And Starmer put it as Farage bad-mouthing their country. But maybe Farage was just, criticizing Starmer and how the government's running things, and Starmer's trying to conflate that with bad-mouthing the whole country as some sort of spin on optics or something. I really don't know. Perhaps that's what's going on. Let's take a look at what occurs in this clip. Once again, captioned, "Is free speech under threat? Nigel Farage to warn of UK censorship in Washington speech."
I'm delighted to reacquaint with the charming Mr. Raskin. That was delightful testimony you gave me earlier on with your speech. But hey, that's fine. You can say what you like. I don't care. Because that's what free speech is. And in a sense, this has all been going wrong now for a couple of decades. We've kind of forgotten the Voltairean...
It's crazy how when he says it's going wrong, the freaking video quality just glitches out. What the heck? That was crazy.
...principles that will fight and defend to the death your right to say something that we fundamentally disagree with. That is the absolute foundation, if you think about it, of free speech, of democracy, of living in freedom. It's kind of why we fought 2 world wars at massive, massive cost to defend that very principle for ourselves and for many, many others around the country. And I first became worried about all this with cancel culture. The idea that we can't have this speaker go to a university because some people might be offended by what he or she have to say. It is important to note that there is not a parent in the United Kingdom, and I would guess it's the same for America too, that is not concerned about content their children as minors can find on the internet. Not a single parent that is not concerned about this. But at the moment, we're not finding the right solutions. I do myself begin to think that hardware might be one of the solutions, that laptops, that handsets could be programmed so that many apps and many services simply aren't available from these devices. But what we've done is to go down the legislative route. And it's extraordinary that, I come from the land of Magna Carta, I come from the land that gave us the mother of parliaments, and it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into. J.D. Vance did us all a service at the Munich Security Conference back in February this year. He really got this debate up and running, and it's a vital one. We've run on since then. The Online Safety Act was put in place by the last Conservative government. I don't doubt for a minute they're good intentions, but sometimes the road to hell is paved with those good intentions, and we are now where we are.
Yeah, if I recall, just for additional context, I think it originally passed in 2022. I might be wrong about this. This is just like off the top of my head, trying to recall what I read about it before. But it didn't actually start rolling out until like this last 30-day period or so, give or take.
We have a couple of very famous cases. We, of course, have Lucy Connolly, who put out an intemperate tweet after the savage murder of those 3 beautiful young girls, she herself, a mother who had lost a child. It was intemperate, it was wrong, but she removed it 3.5 hours later, sentenced to 31 months in prison. She's now out, having served 40% of the time. I wanted to bring her with me today as living proof of what can go wrong. Sadly, the restrictions that have been put on her banned her from making the trip, which is a very, very great shame. And we, of course, have the extraordinary events that we understood yesterday of Graham Linehan, the comedic writer, and he put out some tweets months ago when he was in Arizona, and months later he arrives at Heathrow Airport to be met by 5 armed police. Armed police, not a big deal in the USA, a very big deal in the United Kingdom. 5 of them. And he was arrested and taken away for questioning. He's not even a British citizen. He's an Irish citizen. This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow that has said things online that the British government and British police don't like. It is a potentially big threat to tech bosses, to many others. This legislation we've got will damage trade between our countries, threaten free speech across the West because of the knock-on rollout effects of this legislation from us.
Furthermore, I mean, we've literally seen Ofcom trying to police American companies already, trying to get American companies censored, all Rumble, 4chan, Kiwi Farms, even I think they were going after like YouTube a bit too, if I recall, and social media platforms in general, trying to get them to conform, to what Ofcom demands. And then simultaneously, we had Ofcom begging YouTube to also promote media like the BBC. On one hand, they try to ruin the platform, and then they turn around and beg for the platform's help.
Or from the European Union. So I've come today as well to be a klaxon, to say to you, don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you would be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses said to the British government, you've simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport. This is a genuinely worrying, concerning, and shocking situation, and I thank you for the opportunity to come here today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well said.
So yeah, I guess that's some of the context into what Scott Starmer is so upset about Farage flying out to the U.S. here and having this speech over in Washington. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. So also keep in mind that Starmer about a month ago had met with Trump in Scotland and was asked about free speech, and Starmer was all like, oh yes, we have free speech. We've had it for a very long time. We're very proud of that fact, or something like that, which became the source of much mockery online.
Today.
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but...
It always freaking just makes me laugh, dude. It always sends me when I see Trump looking at Starmer like that. He just like, I don't know if you're talking about any place in particular, stares at freaking Starmer, stares him down for a second.
I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud about that.
Yeah, we've had it for a very long time. As people pointed out, it's interesting phrasing to put it in past tense like that. Not we have it, but we've had that. And so then with Farage coming out to the U.S. and criticizing the lack of free speech, you know, Starmer's very much not happy about all that stuff, it seems. But yeah, anyways, that's the video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed my coverage, and if you did, please consider liking and or subscribing. It does help out greatly, and I appreciate you. See you in the comments here and in the next one.